And we're back here on Know Your County, right here on WDKN. And I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in this morning. I hope you've enjoyed some of these past interviews that we are replaying here in the month of December. Just taking a look back at some of the best interviews that I've had the chance to do over the past 12 months. And we'll take a look at some other really good interviews in the next couple of weeks. As many of you know, I write a newspaper column every week about local Dickson County history. And I wanted to share with you something that I wrote this week about Frank Clement. Of course, many of you know Frank Gold Clement was a governor who grew up right here in Dickson. I've wrote a few stories about him, and this week I wanted to take a look back at a couple of events that took place during Governor Clement's tenure as governor back in the 1950s. So, as you know, Frank Clement became the youngest Tennessee governor of the 20th century when he was elected to office in 1952. Of course, he grew up right here in Dickson, and he was born at the Hallbrook Hotel. Back then in 1952, the governor was only elected to a 2-year term. So Frank won in 1952, served for 2 years, and then had to run again in 1954. Frank squared off in a rematch against Gordon Browning, the same guy that he had defeated in 1952, and he easily won re-election. And this would ensure that Frank would remain the governor of Tennessee pretty much throughout almost the entire 1950s. Several things did happen during Frank's tenure as governor that would go on to define his legacy. There was two things in particular: the Clinton High School desegregation crisis, and a speech that he did in 1956 at the Democrat National Convention. These two events were, very historic and very important, and they just happened to take place during Governor Clement's tenure as governor. So in 1954, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in the landmark case of Brown versus Board of Education that going forward, schools would not be segregated based on race. Instead, students of all races would go to school together. Some thought that desegregation would happen quickly, but they were wrong. In the fall of 1955, no schools in Tennessee had been integrated. And in places like Clinton, Tennessee, some African American students tried to enroll the all-white schools, but were denied. The black school in Clinton had no cafeteria, no gymnasium, no indoor restrooms, no high school classes. The high school students had to be bused into Knoxville, nearly 20 miles away, just so they could go to high school. Even though there was a high school there in Clinton, they were not allowed to go there. They had to be bused into Knoxville. Now, some of the parents there in Clinton thought that this was unfair and even thought that it was illegal and decided to sue the school. It turns out they were right, and a judge sided with them, ordering Clinton High School to desegregate by the next fall. So on August the 20th of 1956, 12 African-American students registered at the all-white Clinton High School. They were known as the Clinton 12. Their names were Alfred Williams, Alva J. McSwain, Anna Theresa Caswell, Bobby Kane, Gail Ann Epps, Maurice Souls, Minnie Ann Dickey, Regina Turner, Robert Thacker, Ronald Gordon Hayden, William Latham, and Joanne Allen. And it was on August the 26th of 1956 that those 12 students arrived for their first day of school, and they did not know what to expect, and I'm sure that they were probably nervous. The first day of school went relatively well on the inside of the building, but on the outside of the building, major issues were developing. An angry mob began to form, and members of the Ku Klux Klan showed up at the school to protest. It got so bad that the school had to close, and Governor Frank Clement had to bring in the National Guard to protect the town of Clinton and the members of the Clinton 12. When the school reopened, some students were so mean to these newly admitted African-American students, and so they were bullied so badly that several quit going to the school. And by the end of that school year, only 6 of the 12 remained enrolled at Clinton High School. Some of them even moved to other states because they were afraid of the violence against their families. 2 years later, Clinton High School was bombed and destroyed. No one was hurt, and the bomber was never brought to justice. Clinton High School was eventually rebuilt. While it was unpopular at the time for Southern governors to support desegregation, Governor Frank Clement decided to go in a different direction, and today he is remembered for the contributions to the civil rights movement in the 1950s. Now, it was just a few weeks later that another event happened that would prove to be one of the most important events in Frank's political career. He was asked to give the opening remarks at the 1956 Democrat National Convention, and this was a big deal. It would go on, or it would give Frank a national platform, something that could take his career to the next level. Frank was a great speaker. He had been taught by his aunt, renowned speech teacher, Docky Ship Weems. Frank was aware of his talent, and he did work hard to become an even better speaker. Frank electrified the crowd that evening with his speaking style. Future President Bill Clinton, who was 9 years old at the time, watched the speech from his home in his parents' living room. And later, he described in his book entitled My Life that he thought the speech was rousing and was really impressed by Governor Clement's persona on stage. So that was in 1956, and that was the year that Dwight Eisenhower was running for re-election. Now, his running mate was Richard Nixon. Some people were already talking about Nixon succeeding Eisenhower as president in 1960, and Frank did such a good job at the convention that people started talking about him being Nixon's possible running mate in 1960, and they even began talking about Frank Clement running for president down the road. After Frank's second term as Tennessee governor ended at the end of the 1950s, he was not able to run for governor again, but his friend Buford Ellington would succeed him as governor. But this would not be Frank's last time in that office. He was already planning on running for governor again when he was able in 1962. And so I'll follow up that article with another one about Governor Clement next week. So make sure that you tune in to the Saturday morning shows next week. We've got some more good programs lined up for you. I want to thank everybody for listening today to the Old Timer Show, as well as Know Your County. And like I said, we'll be back next week with another couple of good shows. So stay tuned to WDKN. We've got some great music up next. And I guess football's over now, so no Vols today. But we got great music for you, so stay tuned for that. You are listening to WDKN. Next week, there's a Christmas event taking place in Charlotte and one in White Bluff. In White Bluff, they'll have a Christmas parade that will start at 4:30. That's next Saturday. Grand Marshal will be Jimmy Orange, who served in the police department as a sergeant for 35 years. And there will also be 2 honorary Grand Marshals. That will be the Creekwood volleyball team, which brought home the state championship title earlier this year, as well as Jack Martin, who's a senior at Creekwood, and he is the current cross-country state champion, and he is also a local citizen there of White Bluff. And those will be both honorary Grand Marshals. The theme this year for the White Bluff Christmas Parade is a gingerbread Christmas. And Miss Linda Hayes, who I spoke to about the upcoming parade a few weeks ago, wanted me to mention that neighbors and friends from Burns will be invited to participate as well this year. And they did that last year, and it went over really well. And so the Burns folks have been invited back to White Bluff to take part in the Christmas parade. That will begin and end at William James Middle School. There is no charge to be in the parade, but all entries should be lined up at the school no later than 3:45. If you need any information regarding Breakfast with Santa, you can, which is at the community center the same day, you can contact Misty Rogers at City Hall, 615-797-3131. or misty.rogers@townofwhitebluff.com. Also next Saturday, we've got Christmas on the Square in Charlotte. They want you to join them for the City of Charlotte's annual tree lighting on the historic Charlotte Square. That'll take place from 5 to 7:30 p.m. next Saturday, December the 10th. First Federal Bank will have Christmas goodies to give away for all the good boys and girls. Cookies and hot chocolate will be served by the Mount Lebanon Methodist Church. Creekwood High School Choir will perform your favorite Christmas songs. We're looking forward to the holiday and Christmas themed vendors that were going to be there as well, all around the square. So make sure you come and check them out. You can email for more information, cityofcharlottetn@comcast.net, or you can call 615-789-4184. There will also be face painting and balloon fun, and Santa will arrive on a fire truck at 6 p.m. So bring your cameras for pictures. Next Saturday is going to be a lot of fun in White Bluff. My good friends over at the Dixon Middle School football coaching staff wanted me to make another announcement this morning about a football camp that they have coming up. That will be taking place, let me see here, March the 17th at Dixon Middle School, and it will be the Legends of Tennessee football camp. And that will be here before you know it. And they are just happy to announce that. These guys will be coming back this year. They've had this event several years in the past. It's been very successful over the past few years. So that'll be a lot of fun. And they are, of course, looking for sponsors. If you want to help out with that, be sure to give Coach Profit a call over at the middle school. And again, that will be a camp for the young football players taking place on March the 17th at Dixon Middle School. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for waking up and turning on your radios this morning and spending a little time with me. We're going to take our first break, and we'll be right back here on Know Your County, right here on WDKN.
Classroom part of it is they were under construction right there, and so my class was the second class to graduate from what is now Dixon Middle School. And my first year of playing football was Coach Hamdorf's last year to coach football. So I got to be on the field, and with he and Coach Self were the two coaches that coached. Of course, they're legends in Dixon County, and Coach Self was a legend over at Austin P where he played football, and Coach Hamdorf was I think he's in the Hall of Fame at Tennessee Tech where he was a outstanding athlete.
My understanding is 16 letters. He played 4 sports for 4 years, and just dominated all 4 of them.
Yeah,
is what I've always been told.
He was what you would call a man's man.
What was it like playing for him?
It was not the kinder, gentler type of coaching that you see nowadays. It was we were talking earlier. Back then, you didn't get water breaks. I knew when Coach wanted me on the football field, he'd be out there practicing with the varsity, and he'd say, "All right, you sausage sacks line up." And I knew I was a sausage sack, so I would go trotting out on the field and line up to wherever he wanted me to line up. So it was a good introduction, but I mean, it wasn't anything that wasn't out of the ordinary. I mean, that's just part of it back in our days.
Times change, things are different, and definitely I think a lot of people are probably interested in hearing about those old days, because some people around here are saying we need to get back to some of that stuff. Maybe our football team would turn it around a little bit, but that's all very interesting to me, the old Dixon High School days. I've spent a lot of time researching it, and spending a little time teaching over at the Dixon Middle School. Even though that's a middle school now, it still has the history of the high school sort of ingrained in there. You've got the gym, which is named after Coach Self. You've got the football field, which is named after Coach Hamdorf, and I've always just really been interested in those fellas.
Yeah, my sophomore year was Coach Hamdorf's last year, and then the next year they hired Coach John Tucker. And John is a true legend in the state of Tennessee. When he retired, he was the winningest high school coach in the state of Tennessee, and there. You talk about toughness. There was no drop off from Coach Hamdorf to Coach Tucker. It was a challenging life out there on the practice field, and he was an intense man and expected you to do certain things. And I guess that's the intensity that the coaches, that the players at Dixon County High School, that's probably the reason why I was as tense as I was, because I played under two very intense coaches.
it's pretty rare that you go from one legendary coach to another, but Coach Tucker, he was award winning and broke records and things like that.
Yeah,
didn't he?
I mean, the state winning as coach, and I mean he had players to play at the University of Tennessee and going into pro careers and stuff like that, and you know, you'd go to during the off season, football coaches would have coaches clinic, and Coach Tucker would be one of the speakers, and stuff that I taught right up to the end of my career were things that I learned from Coach Tucker when I was playing high school football.
Well, now I know it's tough when you're humble and you don't want to brag too much on yourself, but Coach, you were a great football player, one of the best that's ever come from around here. And one thing, and I told you this before the show started, but when I worked over here at the Dixon Middle School, they still have a lot of the old Dixon High School awards and newspaper clippings and things like that. And as I'm walking through the hall every morning, I see this newspaper headline, Fussell, top rusher in the state. And I just always loved that, and I always thought I'd like to talk to him about that one day. So tell me, what was it like, you know, that season where that things were going so well for you? Take me back there just a little bit. And like I said, I know you're humble, but tell me a little bit about that, because a lot of us are interested.
I'll tell you about, I don't know if anybody remembers Beano Cook and this legend stuff about me. Beano used to say he was a wedging in his own mind. And no, I was surrounded by great people. Jackie Bledsoe, Keith Burton, Butch Bell, Jimmy Fuzzle, Donald Holt, Donald Redden, Larry Toy, Rodney Blake. Those were the guys that made things. And as I got into coaching, I got to see some of the greatest running backs that this county's ever seen. And they weren't. If it hadn't been for those other guys, they wouldn't be there. But we were just kind of up in the air till we had a fall practice with Clarksville High School. And one of the best offensive linemen that we've ever had in this county that could have played and dominated on any teams was a guy that played left tackle for us by Hurley Mayberry. And Clarksville gets off the bus, and they were bigger than us as they were getting off the Greyhounds. And as they got off the bus, they got bigger. The big kids that were getting off first were the running backs and quarterbacks, and then the big kids got off. And I'm thinking, man, we are about to get it handed to us this day. And on the very first play from scrimmage, they had the ball, and Hurley played nose man on defense, and they ran a trap right up the middle, and they tried to double-team Hurley Mayberry. And Hurley, with one hand, knocked the guard off that was trying to block him, and with the other hand, he knocked the center off that was trying to block him, and then he hit the fullback for a loss. And I looked at the rest of them, and I said, boys, we got a ball game going today. And it was we had a really good team. We complimented each other. We played well. We liked each other. So it was interesting season. Only lost one ball game that year to a team out of Nashville, Cumberland, and other than that, we ran the tables, and it was exciting to be out there.
Well, Coach, on the way out here, I want to ask you one last question. So, like I mentioned, retirement a few days ago, there were a few teachers that retired that had been there for a really long time over at the high school. One of those was Coach Nelson Pierce, and he, he was retiring after being with us for a really long time, and he got up there and gave a little speech, and really connected with me and resonated with me because he got up there and talked a little bit about Cougar pride and what that really meant to him to be a Cougar, and kind of some advice for us going forward on kind of how to keep the culture the way that it was and the way that it's been and kind of what made us successful. If I were to ask you sort of what that meant to you, what being a Cougar or what Cougar pride meant to you, what would you say?
Well, first off, I want to congratulate Nelson for retirement, and he played football for me, and I think he was the first 3-year starter that we had at the high school, because back then it was just with sophomore, juniors, seniors. But my philosophy, and I probably put it in different perspective throughout the years, but if I was thinking about that the other day, if I had to say what my philosophy was, and I can't even spell philosophy, is show up every day, outwork your opponent, learn from your mistakes. If you can do, to me, if you can do those 3 things, then, you've got a chance. You've got a chance in every ball game, and you got a chance in to succeed in life if you'll do that. Show up every day, outwork everybody, learn from your mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes. Learn from them, and then move on.
That's some great advice, and I appreciate you reminding the people of that today, because as we're trying, as we got our new coach coming in, one thing that he said is, I want to keep the tradition going. I want things to be like they used to be, and so it's good to hear from some of the guys from your day exactly what that is and what that means, so that we can pass that along to him so that he can instill that in our culture here. So, Coach, 39 years, there's a lot of players who have played for you, and in addition to that, you were also a teacher who countless students learned under you as well. And there's probably a lot of them listening today. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the people who are listening who remember you very fondly? It
was, like I say, it's the most pleasurable part of my life. I know I was tough on a lot of those, kids. I taught swimming and I taught life saving. Life saving was a brutal course. I was a study hall monitor, lunchroom monitor, walk in the hallways, quit chewing gum, take that hat off type things. But, I was doing it with as much love as I could, trying to keep a safe environment for the kids at the high school. And I think, I hope, and I think that when I was around, that everybody felt like, well, things are going to be all right, because coach is here, and I tried to do that. Tried to take care of the little fella that might have needed a little help in situations.
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate you coming in this morning. You always meant a lot to me, and it really means a lot to me that you came in here today and got up early on a Saturday to come in here and talk with me. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are going to enjoy listening to this conversation and then just kind of taking their memory back to the old days for a few minutes, right?
Oh, I could tell some stories, but Coach Spurlock, I appreciate y'all having me on, and wish you great success in your soccer coaching career.
Well, thank you very much, because if it wasn't for coaches like you, for me to look up to and want to be like, I don't know if I'd ever become a coach. So thank you, Coach. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back here on WDKN.